You don't need more motivation, but what you need is unconditional love and acceptance to create life-changing breakthroughs, leading to happiness and joy. Spiritual awakening through personal crisis is, like I said, a paper I wrote when I was 24 and were graduating to become a psychotherapist. And out of all the things I could have been doing, and I loved specifically psychoanalysis, and I did a lot of work and practiced already for a couple of years at that point with working with a lot of trauma of all different kinds, very severe typically in childhood and adulthood, family therapies, all sorts of things like that, dynamics. And with all that, spiritual crisis was a topic that I felt is very relative to write about in the context of therapy. Because one of the things I've noticed, and I started learning psychotherapy and became a psychotherapist after already years of working, already probably hundreds, maybe thousands of people at that point. Because I started at 17 years old working with groups, doing workshops, spiritual healing workshops. So to me, I've seen that bringing in spirituality to people and opening them up to it definitely leads to very fast healings, fast therapy if you want, and release of that trauma, and people are gathering, most of all, confidence in themselves, and second of all, heal the intimacy issues, heal trust, and start trusting other people, and now they can fill up and have exchange and beautiful relationships, right? So in essence, this is really what's gonna make you in this 3D feel good, right? So and on the other hand, spiritual awakening also comes with a lot of almost psychiatrical sort of symptoms, right? People would experience depression. People would experience anxiety when they are going through the spiritual crisis. And what is spiritual crisis? Spiritual crisis is similar to existential crisis, is when you've lost the purpose that you had. You've lost one reality that you had, and you thought you're good here. And suddenly it's been either taken away, or you came to age crisis, identity crisis. They all come to this point where I've lost it. Like I had it and now I've lost it. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. Those important existential questions. And so spiritual awakening comes with that too, because if any of us do feel lost and lost especially sense of direction and purpose, we obviously waking up in the morning and we've got no clue what we're doing. We don't have motivation. It feels like we're not fueled, we're not pushed towards something. We are not pulled towards something. We are not pushed out of something, right? We are just sort of sitting there and we've lost it. We've lost that direction. And purpose is what gives us that fire under the wings. Is when you wake up and you know what you're doing. You've got it. You're on the way, right? Whatever that is again. And what happens in a moment of spiritual crisis is that you have to rethink everything. And you will use your thinking power, your mind power, energetic power, spiritual power. And what does it mean? Spiritual power means you will use all the beliefs about spirituality that you have. What do you have there? If you, like I said, if you believe it's about the body, biological being, then you will be like, all right, I'm experiencing my feelings of loss. Let me look into my diet. Let me look into brain health. Let me, like literally start exercising. How can I get my body to the point where I feel confident, strong, and ready to handle everything? If, let's say, you believe in God and you say, okay, this is my test. And those moments of spiritual crisis happen typically triggered, very, very often triggered by physical, practical, and emotional crisis. Though there is a specific thing that triggered it, right? And of course, age could do that. And, scientists could say now, okay, hormones, your hormones are changing and you are experiencing what you think is a crisis in your body. It feels like a big shift, right? Teenagers, right, experiencing crisis. It's very physiological, the hormones, right? The overwhelm of hormones, they have to deal with that. It's just an example. Menopause, right, or midlife, for men and women, it's a very physical sensation that leads us then to rethink what is it that we are and where is it that we are going. Okay, so this is why spiritual now realm becomes very sort of present, because your physical reality also had changed. And sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's been a breakup in a relationship, loss of status. If it's loss of money, it's often the same loss of status, right? Especially if it's big money was lost. So like whatever emotionally happened there, or trauma, right? Like whatever it was there emotionally, right? It could also trigger you thinking about, oh my gosh, for example, my intuition didn't work. I trusted this person, but I shouldn't have. Or I will, you've lost somebody. It's so sad, right? Like, I mean, I had that when my first husband died. I was like, well, he died. Now what am I? What am I doing here? Right? There was a moment where I kind of lost it. I've lost my previous identity, right? So whatever we are doing, we are faced with that crisis. Now it's become spiritual crisis because we have to rethink our beliefs, our fate, our faith, our destiny, our whole blueprint. We have to think something that will help us to move forward. Okay, so this is how they are all connected. And in the midst of that spiritual crisis, one of the things could happen when we have this great desire to hear, to have that direction. So I hate to say that, right? Whatever you are going to hear, it is for you. You can call it the guides, the ascended masters, angels, aliens, whatever you want, right? In a sort of psychological way, the explanation of that is that it is your superego. Because in all of us, according to Freud, this is psychoanalysis for you, we have three entities within us. The it, you can also call it the child, the instincts, our sort of unpolished, often unacceptable, unruly self. Often people also call it shadow. We have the ego, so ego is kind of in the middle. It's the adult in us, if you want. It's something that we are like, okay, this is me in my human body living this human experience. Everything comes to this. I understand that my values, my spirituality, my superego, that's the next part, belongs here. And my I also have instincts. I also have desires and needs and fears. I totally get it. I now, as a middle this entity, the adult, the ego, I'm going to integrate all of this and come up with something. And whatever something is, it's the experience you live. And if you identify with your experience, you ultimately identifying with your ego, right? However, and this is maybe where people like talking about giving ego a bad name. You'll not hear it from me, because I think we should definitely learn to live with our ego and love our ego and really you know, embrace our ego, but we also have to, I feel, embrace both our sides as the shadow and the white shadow, or the superego, the superpower, the God. Either way, we want to integrate all of that and be that whole being that could operate in this reality and live in this reality as a whole person and enjoy it. Because obviously you become very powerful, you become very, you know, deep in your all of your dimensions, right? If you're going to start actually integrating those parts, the ones you can't accept, right? Your child, everything that you left behind, you don't want anybody to know, or even yourself to know. Those are the triggers typically we see us do, the patterns, all of that stuff, right? Those unhealthy, dark, sabotaging patterns, like all of that is there. But we want to bring it in, we want to understand it as much as possible, and we want to let it play. And a lot of the things I do, obviously, with you guys on my retreats or in programs, where I show you how to play, let your shadow play on a daily basis, because it is important. Otherwise, you're just digging yourself deeper into the hole by trying just to be the good girl, the good boy, just whatever everybody else sees, the ego, right? This is, you're gonna fail with that, because that other stuff you suppressed is also showing up. You're just not aware of it. You're just hating on people, or worry on people, or love everybody. For example, if you actually noticing that you're a very loving person, then what it really tells me, for example, if I speak with you, that you have enormous love for yourself. And isn't that great? And this is why we all have to work on self-love. Because ultimately, when you love yourself, you can start loving people. If you're not afraid of yourself, you're not going to be afraid of people. But if you're hating yourself, then you're going to hate other people. It's just the freaking same. It's like the shadows are shadows. They are right there in front of our nose, and there they are, right? And on the spiritual side, right, the intensives you have, the expectations you have, the standards you have, the aspirations you have, we can call them white shadow. I call them white shadow if I'm working with you on the program, right? When you're examining all of those things that you desire to become, in a way that's the inner voice, that's the inner guide, the inner parent that tells you what is it that you need to do, what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong. It's your conscience, it's your judgment, like everything is there, right? And instead of putting it and separating it from yourself and creating a sort of a toolbar, some kind of an alter ego that starts living by itself like it's another entity, and you will call it angels, you will call it guides, God, something out there, but it's not me. And so my approach to that is more like, well, and it's energetic. My approach is hugely energetic. What I want to tell you that it is your energy, it is you. It is literally, again, if there was another person next to you, they would experience those values different way, because they're not you, they are themselves. So they, God, if you want, even if you are the same religion, they, Christ has the same name, has the same story, same set of rules. However, this person experiences Christ completely differently from you, right? Is that right? You can imagine that, right? So why is this? Because it's hers. It belongs to her. It's her meta model, and you've got your meta model. So when you're living with your meta model, you like, my advice is to integrate it, to really take charge and understand that the more separate it is from you, the more you think you don't have control over what you believe in, the more sort of you are vulnerable to what's gonna happen here if situation changes, right? On a very practical, physical level, if something happened and you now have to change, that spiritual crisis will feel much worse for you if you don't understand that thing, that realm of spirituality belongs to you, and you are in charge of it. You are in charge of it. You can do whatever you want there. Literally whatever you want. How does that sound, guys? That you will do whatever you want. You can believe in whatever you want. There's literally nobody sitting next to your head and tells you that that's the truth. It's up to you. So pick yourself something that's going to make you feel better, that is good for you, that is going to motivate you, it's going to drive you, it's going to give you higher expectations, it's going to give you higher standards in life, it's going to give you permission to be this, instead of this is the conditions. You have to be hard worker, you have to be suffer so much, you have to sacrifice, so you have to do this and that, and there is a whole list of things that you have to do to become happy. Can you just have a God that tells you, well, as soon as you woke up and showed up, that's it, I already love you, you already loved, it's all good. Now let's go, let's play, let's create something useful, hopefully, or not, right? Could you have God like that? Right? So it's actually up to you. And this is my gift to you. This is where I want to understand that as a human in 5D, this is what you have to really explore. That's your assignment. If you're living in 5D, you want to embrace that it is your 5D. You are in charge of it. You are experiencing it. And therefore you can dictate what is it that you experience. And most of the time it suits us not to examine that. For some reason we think, well, we have this set of rules and we're just playing by them and we're just going to suffer through them all our lives, because that's what we knew when we were kids. We suffered through the set of rules when we were kids, and now here we are still suffering. But really, it's up to you. You can change that. You can change that, right? In our day and age, and we luckily live in a place where we're not gonna get, stoned by, or killed, or what's not, by changing our beliefs. You can believe whatever you want. So find yourself a better belief. That's all there is. So that's the 5D. That's your experience of 5D. I hope it helps you and answers your question. Because your question is, I started living in 5D. So what I'm seeing is, and what I think that is happening, and it's a good thing, that you live now, you found your set of rules, you found yourself as a spiritual being, as somebody who has direction, who has purpose, and you totally let that guide you in your physical reality. And of course, exactly, I mean, it does guide you in your physical reality just as much as your physical reality and as your emotional self also inform, your beliefs and your spiritual 5D self, right? So either way, it's good, right? You're in a good place. And tulpa is when our sort of reality is either so boring or so unbearable. Sometimes it happens in a very sort of extreme, traumatic sort of situations where people just really separate that spiritual being from themselves and kind of sort of imagine that there's something out there that controls them and takes them somewhere and tells them what to do, right? So that's called tulpa. So, and we create that tulpa when we are 14 years old, typically around that time. It's to do with a lot of disappointment we experience with our reality, with our typically figures of authority figures, parents, whatever we're gonna see there as teenagers. We're on a lookout to find what's wrong with them and what wrong they're doing, because we're separating biologically. You see how that spiritual crisis is actually informed by our hormones a lot, right? We have to separate from our parents biologically, not to have ancestral relationships. So teenagers go against their parents, they rebel against parents, and the more they love them, the more they rebel typically, because they really have to make a stand and say, I'm not here with you, with your values, with your stuff, right? This is the spiritual awakening. They are like, no, your spiritual realm, your 5D is not my 5D. I don't want this anymore. I've served you long enough. I soothed your anxiety and entertained you and provided you intimacy long enough, but now I'm going my own way. And when that happens for a teenager, they also, just to separate, they start noticing things and doing reality check and examining and questioning their parents and their authorities' beliefs is a way for them, is a methodology for them to separate from them. And so when they are doing that, they obviously gonna get disappointed, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get disappointed and say, I don't need you, I'm gonna create my own. Every adult person has to go through that process where they at some point become autonomous and start thinking independently and create some kind of a meta model there, right? And so tulpa shows up in those moments where those values that they want to embrace are so far-fetched, right? Those role models they want to follow and become and be like are just so out of their league and out of their reach that they want to go there. And it's great, because that's really tells me that if your super ego goes there now, that's because it's fantastic. It's if you're a woman, your father really gave you great, a lot of permission. If you're a man, your mother had really encouraged you and gave you permission to reach for the stars. But for the teenage mind, those stars could be so far out that then they will start creating this whole different persona that is worthy of that dream, of that goal, of that new 5D, right? So, and that persona that is worthy of all of those goods that are happening for your 5D, because that's where you're going now, is called tulpa. It's the kind of a entity that we create that lives separate from us, does all sorts of funny different things, heroic things, all sorts of interesting archetypal, sort of walking the archetypal path. And we think that we are separate from that. It's in our imagination is very strong for teenagers especially, and they start now feeding that alter ego, that tulpa, that entity that is allowed to do all of those things, that is equipped to do all of those things, right? And they imagine that, well, I am here, I am me, I could be shy, I could be dull, I could be not that smart, I could be not that bright, I could be not that attractive, I could be not that not this, not that, but that tulpa, that alter ego of mine can do anything. And so they indulge in that possibility. And of course, me as your healer, I would say, well, and we typically very naturally come to this reintegration when we are in our 40s, in our midlife. We kind of come across of that, at this point, I'm not afraid to be all of those great things, because if not now, then when? Now or never. I've written a book about that. Now or never. You'd have to at some point become powerful, because this is it. If you didn't become powerful yet, this is your chance. And to become powerful, you need to claim back that alter ego, that tulpa, that God that you envisioned, that dream that you put out there on the pedestal, on a vision board, and not living yet. You have to take it and say, it belongs to me. I had created it. I am experiencing it. This is my experience. This is me. Okay? And as you do that, you become that. Because now it's not separate. And sometimes your dream will become more realistic. Sometimes it will go so much bigger than what you thought you are allowed to have, because you will start changing your meta model as you're experiencing yourself. Sometimes you will realize you achieved all of your dreams already. Now what? Right? So there's a lot of interesting things will happen once you start integrating your tulpa. But one of the things I can guarantee will happen, that you will become more powerful, more magnetic, energetic, serving from the highest. guiding others as being led by your spirit, by your soul, by your heart.